We don't have anyone around, and I was by myself and Oscar. He wouldn't go with others, he wouldn't go and make new friends. He's a bit hesitant. So I said to them, like, he's like that. He wouldn't talk to everybody. He will just sit and play with his cars and take hours and hours. He can sit by himself, and he doesn't actually get involved with new activities. I had discussion with the cat.
Sometimes he struggled with routine, and it could be, and sometimes he was very stuck in routine where he just wanted the same thing, and then if something had changed, he didn't cope with that change. And at first, when I had to use Epic, I was kind of like, oh, what is this? All it was any child that I felt needed a little bit of extra support. You'd fill out some forms, do some observation on children, and then you'd get in contact with Kim, who plays a big part of it, and she's been amazing.
I oversee the rollout of our Early Intervention Services program.
And then she told me, why don't you come on and join the meeting with Jacinta.
So I'm here to actually help the educators to work with their family.
And then I lead the meeting just as a conduit between everyone in the room, ensuring that the conversation is child-focused. It's a bit of a thing to throw around, that the parent is the expert on their own child. We really want to make that real and tangible for parents and for families.
Coming here is looking at the teachers and telling them my difficulties and finding the answers, all the answers. It's like making new friends. It's like the best thing.
Jacinta's at the stage of assessing Oscar and talking to Mum about whether he is school ready.
The really important thing, it's one of the things that really comes out from it, is that the families are able to identify where their child needs support.
They're the only way I feel like, helping me through all this difficult time when I was by myself with Oscar. And I wouldn't, because at that time I didn't have anyone.
I know Mum's on her own here with Oscar, and so that just led us to do the best we can for Oscar.
All I know is these guys are helping me. They're friends to me. Hi, my name is Meena Rani, and I'm Oscar's mum.
And what's your name? Who is this?
Oscar.
Oscar! Okay, Oscar.
I'll do whatever it takes, for Oscar.
High five?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Oscar.
Okay.
Oh.
Good boy.
I am Robert De Silva. We are at the men's shed trying to show the kids from primary school as to how we work at the men's shed.
I know that we're probably going to be building some things and probably do some gardening and stuff like that. We've got the teacher said we're making some bee farms.
I'm excited to build the plants and the boxes.
Yeah, it's fun, yeah.
I've been in this program for almost 9 years now. We started the men's shed in 2011, and since then we have been working here. Mostly we do community work over here, helping the people to build up their schools.
They meet us and they have something to do with their grandparents, and when they see us they've got a new idea of what life is about.
3, 2.
Hello everybody and welcome to this, the ordinary meeting of Council for the 10th of September 2019, which is now officially open. A warm welcome to members of the public gallery who have joined us tonight here at the Civic Centre, and also those watching from home via the internet. Thank you for joining us. As well as being live streamed, the recording of this meeting will also be available on our website, so attendees in the gallery are advised that their presence may be recorded, and I'd also just ask that mobile phones please be switched to silent mode during the course of the meeting. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders, spirits, community members past and present. I'd also like to extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Councillors, there are no apologies tonight, but I just need to remind you that Councillor Lawrence is on an approved leave of absence for this meeting. So, Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes from the ordinary meeting of Council held on Tuesday 27th of August 2019 be confirmed? Councillor Nation and Councillor Sypek. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest in any item on the agenda this evening, please? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I have a conflict of interest, an indirect one for conflicting duty for report 10.2 for reasons disclosed to the CEO prior to the start of the meeting. I also have an indirect conflict of interest for conflicting duty on item 11.1, similarly for reasons disclosed to the CEO prior to the start of the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Does any other councillor have any conflict of interest in any item on the agenda tonight? No. We shall move on to presentations. There are no presentations tonight, nor have we received any petitions or joint letters. So we now come to public question time, and we have received questions from one community member for tonight's meeting. I remind residents that once the answer has been provided, there is no opportunity for further questions, comment or debate. I'd now like to ask, I don't think Adam's not here. Adam Ford had two questions actually, but he's not here, he's here. Just in time. Adam, yes.
Thank
Just
you.
about to call, or literally calling you up. So if you wouldn't, sorry to catch you like that, but if you wouldn't mind reading your questions, if you can.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Having been advised prior to the last ordinary meeting of Council that the time frame for securing a heritage assessment for the property at 81 Charles Street, Ascot Vale, has blown out due to the length of time, required to engage a consultant, the survey having been completed within a 2-week time frame, but more detail being required, can Council now advise why the item is not on the agenda for tonight's meeting, as it seems anomalous for the submission of further necessary detail to have taken so much longer than the preparation of the draft report?
Thank you, Mr. Ford. I'll just ask Ms. Writer to respond to that question.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, so the draft assessment's still underway. It is unfortunate that it's taken longer, but we're at the behest of our heritage consultants. Once that documentation has been finalised, a report may come back to Council, although depending on what the assessment actually says, it may not need to come back before Council.
Thank you. Did you have another question as well, Mr. Ford?
Second question. Can Council assure the community that the final findings of the heritage assessment for 81 Charles Street, Ascot Vale, will be consistent with the contents of the draft report, and that the delays do not relate to a process of seeking further opinions with a view to benefiting one or more interested parties in the process? Pardon me.
Thank you. I'll just ask Ms. Writer again to respond to that question.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. The work is being done by an independent consultant, and their findings will inform the decision it's a relatively straightforward process, and it's being undertaken as quickly as we can. It's not a matter of anything untoward, as I say, relatively straightforward.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. There are no reports from special committees on tonight's agenda, so we will move straight to reports at 10.1. And the first report on tonight's agenda is the Draft Procurement Policy 2019. Councillors, do I have a motion, please? Councillor Sypek?
Happy to move the officer's recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sypek, do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sorais, thank you. Are there any questions, councillors? No. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think it's self-explanatory that if the paper's been read, it's very self-explanatory.
Thank you. Councillor Sorais, would you like to speak? Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next report is 10.2 and is entitled 2019-20 Capital Works Program Update, and Councillor Nation has a conflict of interest. Thank you. Councillors, do I have a motion for agenda item 10.2, please? Councillor Sorais?
I move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek, thank you. Are there any questions, councillors? No. Councillor Sorais, would you like to speak to the motion?
It's merely procedural. It's just basically authorising an additional $132,000 for works down at the Riverside Netball Courts.
Thank you. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion? Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Marshall?
I'd like to foreshadow. So I'm trying to work out whether to foreshadow or to move an amendment to this. So I'd like to move an amendment. I'll put my mic on. So it will be the first part of Councillor Sorais' motion with the addition of the words excluding the conversion of courts 13 and 14 costed at $25,000, bringing the project cost variation to $107,000.
Okay, thank you. So we have a formal amendment. Do I have a seconder for that formal amendment? Councillor Byrne? Thank you. Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak to your formal amendment?
I will, and this is just something that at this point in time we need some further clarity in relation to. Our project down at Riverside is magnificent. I suppose it's stating the obvious to say there have been a few hiccups, but I think we just need to be absolutely clear. The conversion of the courts 13 and 14, when they are happening, and I'm really mindful about potential conflicts between different sports, and so perhaps this can be something that can be clarified quite quickly for the next council meeting, so we can be clear that by going down this path of line marking for those courts, that we are not going to be creating more issues between the sports that will be using those facilities. So as I said, in principle, I don't have an issue with this, but we want to be sure that all of the stakeholders have been consulted, agree, because if we don't, then we will have some very unhappy people.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to the formal amendment?
Just briefly, just that it would be highly inappropriate of us to be changing line markings on courts without proper consultation between various users. We want everyone to be playing happy down there, and whilst I'm not thinking that this will be a huge consultation process, we just need to make sure that all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed, and for the sake of bringing this back in a fortnight's time or whenever it may be, will potentially save us a lot of grief down the track. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Any other councillor wish to speak on the formal amendment? Councillor Sorais?
Yes, I'm happy to support that amendment. The only issue is that I would hope that there's no variation in the costs that would be incurred should we go down that path in a couple of weeks, whatever that is, but otherwise no problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor? Councillor Cusack?
Well, only to support the mover of the motion and the seconder to say that when you're this close to completing a large project that has had a lot of bits and pieces associated with it that weren't necessarily planned for, but they occurred, and so on like that, it would be quite silly not to make sure it gets over the line for the sake of potentially a few dollars, and also that the right people have been spoken to about it to make sure that all of the queries have been addressed. Common sense should prevail here rather than anything else.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Any other councillor wish to speak to this formal amendment? I shall put that to the vote. So at the moment we're just voting on the formal amendment. So I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? So that's unanimous. So that becomes the substantive motion. Councillor Sorais and Sypek have spoken, and Councillor Marshall on the substantive motion. No, you haven't actually. Really only spoken about the formal amendment. So would any councillor wish to speak on the substantive motion, please? Councillor Byrne?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just briefly on the Rochelle Road existing hump and the changing of that. There obviously was an extensive LADM that was completed in East Keilor last year, I believe, and this is a slight modification to this, but I have been assured that the people living in properties and the owners of the property have been notified of the changes that are occurring that really did need to happen to accommodate the bus and the traffic that goes down Rochelle Road. And there is no actual cost variation to the change.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Marshall?
To speak in relation to Kent Street briefly, noting our success in getting what is in context a fairly significant and substantial grant, so well done to the officers for their work on that. And I very much look forward to seeing the Kent Street works really progressing. There has been some work along the street, but we went through a mini LATM some time ago, and there have been some revisions to the design based on the community consultation and the feedback we've had, so I think everyone is looking forward to getting this done.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. I'll just, if we could grab Councillor Nation back into the chamber, please. Thank you. So agenda item 10.3 is the authorisations and delegations of council review 2019. Councillors, do I have a motion, please? Motion, please, for 10.3. Councillor Sypek, what would you like to move?
Officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sorais, thank you. Are there any questions, councillors, about this agenda item? Otherwise, Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
It's self-explanatory, Madam Mayor, once again.
Thank you. Councillor Sorais, would you like to speak to the motion? No? Any other councillor like to speak to this motion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is Councillor Expenses Report, 1st of April to 30th of June 2019. Councillors, do I have a motion, please? Councillor Sypek.
Officer's recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Serace, thank you. Councillors, are there any questions on this report? Otherwise, Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
Once again, self-explanatory, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Serace.
It's purely just acknowledging and accepting the expenditure through the councillors, which is printed out in the report here. Obviously, some councillors have been to conferences and seminars. Their expenditure would be higher for that particular month, but it's something that we do quarterly, and we present it to the community so that everything is transparent, and this is just rectifying that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Serace. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next agenda item is 10.5, and it is the state motion signage in public park and recreation zones. Councillors, do I have a motion, please? Councillor Sypek.
Once again, move the officer's recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Gatchimarichi, thank you. Are there any questions, councillors? Otherwise, Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor. This is to go to State Council, to the MAV. I think it's a very, very important motion that we're going to be putting up, because this not only affects Moonee Valley, this affects every single council in Victoria with public open space advertising.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Gatchimarichi, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just really briefly, I think to further repeat Councillor Sypek's comments, but it also means that for the community, for sports clubs, for council, if the state government accepts a level of consistency across the board, it gives us much greater clarity, and it gives much greater clarity to members of the public about what is or isn't allowed going forward, and to sports clubs about what is or isn't accepted at some point in the future. So, happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Cusack.
Well, there's a number of issues that are sitting behind this motion. Clearly, there's the question of how an individual council can approach the critical issues of signage on its open spaces that are, first and foremost, should be open for all of the community, and not be in some way compromised by a massive amount of signage and so on. Now, there are rules around this sort of thing, but we know that this is being broken all over the place. So there is a critical need to take this to the MAV, because there is an important principle at stake here, which is about equality across the whole of the council areas and how they approach this. If we have a situation, for instance, where a particular association or number of clubs that are part of an association are dealt with in one municipality differently to and that association is dealt with differently in another municipality, you might find things like advertising, signing and promotional support and so on like that of clubs vary and change. So what we're really talking about here is something of a first for the MAV to take some leadership on, and that is to literally implement what is already there in the law, to get away from this excessive things where there is signs everywhere you look, and to keep it corralled in some sort of common sense sort of way, so that we don't end up with a blight of signs on our community, and also that local spaces are respected, is the word, are respected for what they are, and are not something that is just to be used as a space for advertising. We have enough advertising on our TVs and radio and all that sort of stuff, and there are ways about that. I appreciate, though, of course, that clubs and so on like that do require some sort of support, and often sporting clubs require some sort of support, but they should now be able to do this in a way that is organised and reflective of community standards.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item of business is notice of motions, and Councillor Nation has a conflict of interest in this agenda item.
Madam Mayor, I'll leave for the night. Thank you.
Thank you. So 11.1, I'd like to call on Councillor Samantha Byrne to present her notice of motion entitled Increasing Exposure for Young Moonee Valley Artists.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to move that Council resolves to request the CEO to 1. Investigate hosting an exhibition of artwork produced by local Year 7 to 10 students as part of the Incinerator Gallery program for 2020, and 2. Brief Council on the results of this investigation and any ensuing program.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Do I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Gatchie-Marici, thank you. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I love attending the Incinerator Gallery for any event, and every year the fireworks exhibition amazes me beyond belief. For those of you who may not be familiar with it, it showcases some of the great work that local VCE students complete. Fireworks is one of, if not the most popular exhibition that we hold every year. The vibe is just electric. The Incinerator Gallery is filled with students, teachers, family members and friends, and quite often councillors, and the amount of joy in the room is unmeasurable. Due to the popularity of this event, it has made me consider why don't we extend this opportunity to other year levels. And this notice of motion asks to consider a similar event for Years 7 to 10. I believe that this will help us achieve further engagement with the youth of Moonee Valley and give creative minds an opportunity that they may not have had before. We need to give the youths of Moonee Valley an opportunity to shine, and an extra exhibition for Year 7 to 10 students will allow us to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Gatchie-Marici.
Just to strongly support the motion, and I think Councillor Byrne has spoken comprehensively about why we should do it, but it's a great initiative, so congratulations to Councillor Byrne on bringing it back to us.
Thank you, Councillor Gatchie-Marici. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Sopak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. As I'm a patron of the arts, I do also commend this motion that Councillor Byrne has put up, and I've met Councillor Byrne at the Incinerator on numerous occasions, but I've also, over my 15 years on council, have purchased a lot of artwork. Sometimes I've had permission to purchase on behalf of the council. So we have a lot of local artists and their pieces of art within the Moonee Valley Council. And just, I think it was 2 weeks ago, that Councillor Byrne and I were given permission by yourself, Madam Mayor, to purchase an art piece for the Moonee Valley collection, and young Joshua Mead from Essendon was a very, very grateful recipient of the award, and I look forward to you presenting him with a letter of accommodation that his piece will be a part of our collection. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sopak. Any other Councillor Cusack?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Byrne, well done. Absolutely inspired. And I don't know why it's taken so long for something like this to hit the deck. Thank you. I'm just thinking about how this will work with our schools and with young people who might not be in school, who are actually being marginalised out of the school system and are looking for expression in other ways. And so this is a very, very powerful message that we're sending to young people who are teenagers throughout the whole of our municipality. Art for young people is a very different experience than it is for older people who have absorbed a lot and have learnt a lot and have, you know, got things to say about whatever and all the rest of it. There is this notion of youthful expression. There's this notion of how art is such an important part of our community cultural development. There is a level of engagement, community engagement, that is actually around that very discipline. And that discipline goes to things like how's your mental health and so on like that. And so for many young people, art is that mechanism to go down that track, to look at their mental health and what matters to them and how to be able to get some of those messages across. So this is so important, and especially in Moonee Valley, where we have a higher proportion of young people who are teenagers with mental health problems than the state average. And it's a real critical issue that we have. I think also the notion of being able to learn from others can never be dismissed. And that learning from others comes right across the whole range of abilities that people have, whether they're physical, mental or emotional abilities, whether they're really well honed or they have other issues that they need to balance out. And also, art has no rules, and in particular when you're a teenager, you're looking for no rules. You're looking to be able to do stuff. I'm well put in mind that wonderful piece of work that happens if you go on the website, on the web, and look up the Seattle Ogre. There is underneath a great big freeway in Seattle is a huge ogre, and he's got his hand on top of a Volkswagen car, which is actually the real size of one, a Beetle. And this thing has become the sort of the seventh wonder of the world in the USA. Lots of people go and visit it. The point is, it was dreamt up and put in place as an idea by a 12-year-old. And it has become an important part of Seattle life. Ditto, there'll be some young person in our world who will do the same thing and be given that opportunity by your motion, Councillor Byrne. Good on you.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item of business is urgent business, and councillors, I don't believe we have any items of urgent business. Do any councillors have anything they'd like to report on in their roles as delegates?
Thank you,
Councillor Race.
Madam Mayor. Just to follow up, I'm just looking through. I received a letter from the Minister for Transport, Melissa Horne. I can't find it here, so I will present it. I'll send a copy around to all the councillors. But at the Metropolitan Transport Forum meeting that was held on the 3rd of July, there was presentations given to Melissa on behalf of all councils, and on behalf of Moonee Valley Council. Some of the things that we asked them about were in relation to transport and the need for people getting to and from work. So just a small response that I'd like to just share with the councillors and City of Moonee Valley. It's regarding land use surrounding the Moonee Valley employment cluster in Essendon. And the quote is, in relation to the Moonee Valley employment cluster in Essendon and the lack of commitment towards public transport infrastructure to support this growth. The road network in the area is already near capacity, and as per the recent draft master plan, further significant growth is planned. However, other than proposing additional car parking, no other on-site facilities are proposed to enable the moving of people to and from the area. Given the nature of the land use, there is an opportunity to achieve a great outcome in terms of connectivity for the site and beyond. So we're looking at having further discussions with the Minister. Greg Day, who is involved with Metropolitan Transport Forum, is collating the letters, which I'll have to find it, I'm not sure where I've put it, and send them, collate them all, and then have a further meeting with the Minister so that we can have better representation through Metropolitan Transport Forum for the City of Moonee Valley.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thrice. Any other councillor have a delegate's report? Okay, well, as there are no confidential reports on the agenda tonight, we have come to the end of our meeting. So thank you to members of the public gallery, and for those watching via live streaming, thank you for joining us, and we shall be back in 2 weeks' time. Thank you. I declare the meeting closed. Good night.